Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to the show, listening to us on SiriusXM, checking us out on YouTube or anywhere in the Believe Network where you get your podcasts. We have a fantastic guest coming in. But first, I got to say hello to my co-host. He's former Bears defensive end, former Northwestern standout, CHGO's very own, Fox 32's very own, West End Golf Club's Corey Wootton. What's up, Corey?
Hey, what's up, my man? Another great day. Another week in the NFL, man. It's always a blessing during NFL season, man. What do we do when the NFL season's not here? We talk more about the NFL. So it's good to have actual games, and it's been a great season so far.
Great perspective for a 2-7 Bears team to cherish it while we have it, because one day we'll wake up, it will be February, it will be cold, and it will be gone. Let's bring in our guest here today. I'm so excited to have this guest. This man has helped me in many a struggles on many a Wednesday night setting my lineups, and he's also made me a little money along the way too as well. He's senior fantasy analyst for Sports Illustrated. You can hear him weekly on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Westwood One, and of course with the Believe Network too as well. He is the Stardom Sit-'em King himself. He is Michael Fabiano. Michael, thank you for joining the show. How are you today?
What an introduction. Wow. And I didn't have to pay you for that. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. You know, the Bears, and we're going to talk about this, don't have a lot of fantasy assets. But there's still a lot to talk about as it pertains to fantasy football in the NFL in what's been, I would say, a struggle of a season in a lot of respects for fantasy managers.
Michael, that's so great. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I did want to start with a little general NFL for you. I love fantasy football, near and dear to my heart. We are going to get to some Chicago Bears in a little bit, but I do want to ask you a little bit. I just want to talk about the quarterback position in fantasy football this year. From my seat, it's been a really interesting transition, right? Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen names like Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady. I mean, the list goes on. Phillip Rivers, even a Matt Ryan of the world, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford on their last legs. We've seen a huge turnover at the quarterback position. And of course, it's highly valued in fantasy football. And then when you pull up the stats and you look at the top 10, you're seeing names like Sam Howell, number 6, CJ Stroud is in there, Josh Dobbs at number 10. Are the numbers matching the optics? Has it just been a weird year for quarterback play in fantasy football? And how do you see it playing out in the second half?
At the top, it hasn't been, right? I mean, Jalen Hurts is still putting up numbers. Allen's putting up numbers. Although Mahomes, it seems like blasphemy to take a shot at Mahomes, but I mean, he's averaging like 5 fewer points a game this year than he did last year. So I'd say so far Mahomes has kind of underperformed from a fantasy perspective, but he's got very high standards. You know, Lamar's been up and down. Herbert's been mostly up. This past week he didn't have a great game, but he didn't need to because the Jets stink. I do think the NFL has a quarterback problem, though. My pal Dave Damashek, who I used to work with at NFL Network, said something to me years ago, and it just always has stuck with me. In a world where we've got billions and billions of people, you can't find 32 human beings who can play the quarterback position well on a regular basis. Can't. It's the hardest position to fill in sports, I would suggest. And when you got a guy go down like an Aaron Rodgers or now Kirk Cousins, and I would argue that Kirk Cousins going down is it's the most impactful injury of the year from a fantasy perspective. And we could talk about that. But when you are looking at the waiver wire, especially if you're in a multi-quarterback league, which have become more popular, and you're looking at Clayton Tune and Tyson Bagent, who actually wasn't bad from a fantasy perspective, sans all of his turnovers last week. And guys like that, I mean, Jaron Hall was in the mix. It's gross. Tommy DeVito is going to be the starting quarterback of the New York Giants this week. Tommy DeVito. Not Danny DeVito, although Danny may actually be better. I don't know. I'm not sure.
He actually went to my high school, Tommy DeVito, in Jersey.
Did he really? I'm sure he's a wonderful human being. I hear his dad's a plumber in Jersey. But bottom line here is that Tommy DeVito is not turning the needle for fantasy managers. He's the third string quarterback for the Giants, whose offensive line is shot to hell, who's without Darren Waller, who already don't have any good wide receivers. Yep. There's been a lot that's happened. And thank God that Joshua Dobbs was okay. He had a good game last week, but let's not get things twisted. He wasn't great from a fantasy perspective in Arizona. NFL's got a quarterback problem. It really does. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that are starting games that maybe shouldn't be. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, Joey, this is something we touched on. I think the lack of preseason is contributing to a lot of these slow starts the past couple of years, right? They're limiting the games. Like back when I played, it was like the starters played, 2 series in the first game, 3 series in the second, a whole half third game. So they were getting some reps, and now they're going from not playing at all to then going into the season. That's why we see such inconsistent play. And I think a lot of these guys like Patrick Mahomes, like in the next couple weeks, they're going to really turn it on because they're going to start getting their groove. But it just seems uncharacteristic for some of these guys. Like Josh Allen has really been up and down, and we kind of thought he took that next step a couple years ago. So it's definitely been interesting in the league.
Yeah, so Michael, rolling it forward right now, I think fantasy managers want to know in the second half of the season, we got plenty of time left in the fantasy season. Playoffs aren't that far away, though. So when you're looking at a guy, I'm just going to throw 2 names out there, and if there's a third, please feel free to list it. But I'm looking at a guy like Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow. Is there a second half stud that you still see coming that, it will eventually ascend into that top 10 that was maybe there in the pre-draft rankings at the beginning of the season?
So Burrow's definitely on that list for me. No question about it. I know Lawrence is a second half quarterback, but I would argue that Lawrence has been one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy football among quarterbacks this year. He's averaging 15 points a game. He's had one game with over 18 points, and that was the game that he rushed for 59 yards. So, it wasn't like this was this was a great passing performance. He's got the Niners this week. I know the Niners defense has not been great the last 3 games, but I mean, geez Louise, are they going to lose a 4th in a row? They're still averaging 14 points per game allowed to quarterbacks, or just under 14 points. So I hope you're right, because I have Trevor Lawrence shares, but I mean, Trevor Lawrence is really disappointed. I think Fields could be one of those quarterbacks, but we got to get him back. And, he started to look like Justin Fields before he got hurt. The first few games, you're like, what in the heck is going on? What are the Bears doing? But he started to look like that guy a little bit more before he ended up getting hurt. So Fields could be on that list. I know Kyler Murray wasn't highly drafted, but he's coming back this week, and they're going to have to throw the ball a lot because the Cardinals is not very good. So maybe Cardinals offense starts to pick it up a little bit, and Kyler being the lead in that offense, that could potentially help. I know if Kyler plays this week and it looks like he's going to, I'm starting him. I don't care that he hasn't played in however long. I'll run that risk because my options aren't good. Right? I mean, I liked Kenny Pickett this year. He has not lived up to expectations. Jordan Love has been bad after the first 3 games. The list goes on and on and on. So, those are a couple of quarterbacks that could potentially make some waves here in the second half. But, man, I need Justin Fields back in a big way.
Yeah, I think Bears fans can agree with that. It's so frustrating because I think the biggest thing with the Bears in general has been the coaching, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the first couple games of the season, just struggle with game play calling, game managing. And then all of a sudden during that Denver game, that's when they turned things around. And then the next game against the Washington Commanders, and it just seemed like this is the Justin Fields that we knew he could be. And then the following week, we go back to bad play calling. Then Tyson Bagent comes in. They call a great game against the Raiders. He looks good. Foreman goes off, and everything kind of comes together. And then all of a sudden, another bad week. So it's just been 2 up and down because this was supposed to be such a critical year for this Bears offense, Justin Fields, and the trajectory of his career. And now, there was already a lot of controversy of whether he's the guy or not. I think he is the guy in Chicago, but I think they've done him a travesty. Honestly, the play calling has been so awful at times that you're scratching your head because there should have been so much growth this year with Justin Fields in the offense.
Yeah, and I feel like, part of the reason is, the Bears front office maybe making the wrong kind of hires. Greg Roman's floating around out there somewhere, right? I mean, Greg Roman's had a hell of a lot of success with mobile quarterbacks. I'd love to see him become the offensive coordinator maybe in Chicago. And I don't know if you guys listen to my show or the podcast. I'm really superstitious with stuff, and I love trends. My friends who are Jets fans, I warned them, guys, it's been 50-something years, and every quarterback you guys have brought in either through the draft or a big free agent signing, there's been something that's gone wrong. The Bears are a close second with that too. I mean, we can go back a long way. What quarterbacks have the Bears have in their history that have been great? And I'm not talking about I'm not going back to, the days of Sid Luckman or however far back you want to go. Jay Cutler, okay, maybe Cade McNown never panned out. You guys had Shane Matthews. I mean, Jim Miller was okay for a year, statistically not that great. I could keep going. I don't want to depress you guys at all. But the Bears have also been one of those teams that at quarterback, you kind of snake bit. And so there's talk about, well, maybe this will be his last year with the Bears, and the Bears could end up getting a high pick. And there's, a couple of good quarterbacks there at the top of the draft. But Justin Fields is, I mean, he's a young guy. Like, let him develop and give him an offensive coordinator who is going to play and call plays to his skill set. That was what was just incredibly maddening in the first few games when they were trying to turn him into a pocket passer.
Yeah, Michael, the thing is, what I always talk about with Justin Fields, they're like, oh, it's Mitch Trubisky 2.0. I'm like, how? Right? There are teams that would be lining up to have Justin Fields, the talent that he has. So when people are talking about what they're going to do in the draft, as far as the Bears, I'm looking at what Philly has done, what San Francisco has done. You build around the trenches, and then you start building some other positions. But I think the trenches are so valuable, right? I always bring up the example of the Giants, 07 and 11, the Tom Brady killers, right? Eli gets the MVP. But that should have been Justin Tuck. That should have been another defensive end in 11, JPP and company. So defense wins championships. You know, Von Miller, when he single-handedly got to Cam Newton pretty much every time in there. You know, so Cliff Averill and company and the Legion of Boom. Defense wins championships. I think it's built in the trenches. So people are like, oh, let's draft Caleb Williams and expect a different result. I think you really have to solidify that.
And the Bears have been, kind of, trading away a lot of their defensive assets, right? I mean, Khalil Mack didn't obviously pan out there. Great player, of course, but that didn't end up being a long-term thing. You guys bring in Montez Sweat. We're going to see what happens there. I mean, it's the Bears haven't had one of my buddies, and I'm going to name drop here, and you guys can crap on me all you want. The current WWE World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins, a huge Bears fan. He's a good friend of mine, and we just joke like on text, I'll tell him something about the Bears, and he tries to get optimistic, but he knows that like in the back of his mind something ain't gonna go right, for this. He was optimistic about Fields. I think we all were after what we saw last year, especially from a fantasy perspective. But I mean, I guess the Bears gonna bear.
Yeah, no, Seth's an awesome guy. I had him on my Fox show a couple of years ago. Really good guy.
Really nice guy. Yeah, and very much not his character.
No, not at all.
He is just the coolest, like most chill guy. Yeah.
Exactly. So hopefully going forward with the rest of the season, I'm looking for them just to have some consistency with the play calling, right? Establish the run, get Justin Fields on the move. Cole Kmet has really come alive, and I think he's going to be a big fantasy target coming up, and I'm sure you've been talking about him a bunch. Tell me about Cole Kmet a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting into the end zone, and Bajan has really been targeting him. But like Cole Kmet's, it's kind of been the same thing. Like he's all or nothing. I mean, he's a big game or he gives you like 6 or 7 points. And so he's been hard to trust. But the last couple of weeks, even though this past week he had a bad matchup, he still put up a really good stat line. The week before, Bajan just targeted him a ton. I think he had 10 catches in that game against the Chargers. So, Cole Kmet's become a low tight end one. The problem with the Bears is that they have good players, but not great in the backfield. Khalil Herbert could be back this week. I don't know if he's coming back on a short week, and we're going to find out. The Bears have designated him to come back. But, Deontay Foreman is a good back, and Roshan kind of got sort of worked out of the rotation last week. He didn't really get a lot of burn. But regardless, like when Khalil Herbert comes back, it just muddies the water in that backfield. I don't know who the heck to play, right? One week it's going to be Herbert. One week it'll be Foreman. Another week it won't be anybody because, they'll be behind and they'll have to abandon the run. The wide receivers, DJ Moore's had his ups and downs. He had that one massive game where he had like 50 points. And I think the week before or after he had another good game. But since then, he's been very up and down with Bajan as the quarterback. We mentioned Kmet. I mean, really after Darnell Mooney has had maybe like 1 or 2 decent games, but it's not like a guy you're going to be starting in fantasy. The thing, though, this week is that, and again, I'm not going to, be too tough on the Bears. This is not a good game on Thursday night against the Carolina Panthers. This one's yucky.
You're not setting time aside.
It's kind of yucky too, because like the Panthers are bad against the run, but I don't know which Bears running back to start if Herbert comes back. If it's Foreman, revenge game and matchup, I'll play him. He'll be a flex. Sure. DJ Moore, revenge game, I'm going to play him, but Bajan's going to be the quarterback, so I don't know really what I'm going to get. I'll play Cole Kmet. I will say this. The Bears defense might be a good streaming option this week. If you're bold, because I don't really love to stream on Thursday nights because Thursday nights typically will disappoint us. Yeah. But Bryce Young's not playing at a high level. The Panthers offense is no great shakes. They'll turn the ball over. So the Bears at home, maybe they're a top 10 play among defenses this week. We'll find out.
The thing about the Bears, right? When you expect them to have a strong performance, they go and do the opposite. So this
forget what I just said about the Bears.
This might be the game that Bryce Young has his come to the NFL moment, and all of a sudden he goes for 300. It wouldn't surprise me, right? The lack of pressure from the Bears, the missed assignments, blown coverages at times. So nothing would surprise me with the Bears this year.
This season
has
been so sideways lately, right? I mean. Okay, the Chiefs get beat by the Broncos. The Eagles lose to the Jets. Like, what the hell was that, right? I mean, like,
exactly.
There's been so many weird things that have gone on in the National Football League over the last few weeks. Things have really gone sideways. So, I mean, nothing is, like I always say, the only thing that's predictable about the NFL is that it's unpredictable. There's always going to be weird things that happen. Like, I'll give you an example. This week, I have Devontae Adams in a few leagues. I'm in 15 leagues. It's way too much. He's killing me. Do you know 60 wide receivers have averaged more fantasy points in the last 5 weeks than Devontae Adams? 60. This is one of the elite receivers in the National Football League. He is averaging fewer than 8 points a game in that time. If I gave you the numbers and said, would you start this player in fantasy, and I didn't give you the name, you'd be like, hell no. Yeah. But it's Devontae Adams, so we keep playing him. Devontae Adams is my sit of the week at wide receiver. Why? Last 5 weeks, 61st. In points per game among wide receivers. Jets have not allowed a touchdown to a perimeter receiver. They've given up the fewest points per game to perimeter receivers. But in a crazy football season, Devontae Adams will probably go off this week. It just is what it is. Like, this is the kind of craziness that we deal with. You know, fantasy analysts will tell you that, you know, we kind of just like trust the process. I don't trust the process because the process is, you know, going to kick you in the nuts half the time, and the halftime it'll be right. But this is just a weird, wacky season that it's been.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly weird year. We're here on Believe in Bears with senior fantasy analyst for Sports Illustrated, Michael Fabiano, and former Bears defensive end Corey Wootton. Got a couple more left for you, Michael. A couple general fantasy football questions for any of those that might be interested and invested. You're speaking of the weird season. I'm going to give you the names of 3 different running backs right now that in my opinion, have disappointed or maybe not lived up to their draft value. I want you to tell me who you perhaps has the highest ceiling or the highest potential to hopefully win some championships for some people. So the 3 names are Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, or Tony Pollard. You're near and dear to your heart. Which of those running backs do you feel like is going to be able to kind of step up and help propel some teams to some fantasy glory coming up?
I think it'll be JT. Now, again, predictability in the NFL's it's tough. But last week, it looked like the gap did get bigger in terms of the snaps and the touches. Now, does it go back down this week in Germany against the Patriots? I don't know. But like we started to see a gap between him and Zach Moss. And I think that will probably be the case the rest of the season. That's just a guess. And Jonathan Taylor is the most talented of those 3 backs, at least in my opinion, right now. Bijan Robinson is not getting used correctly. I don't know why Atlanta drafted Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson if they ain't going to use them the way they should be used. I don't get it. I don't understand what they're doing. Go draft somebody else. I don't understand it. I will say this. Bijan's got a good matchup this week against Arizona, and Bijan's got some good matchups down the stretch. So I feel like he's not going to be worth the first-round pick we all took him at, unfortunately. But I think at the end of the year, he's still going to be a top 15 fantasy running back. Tony Pollard, this one, as a Cowboys fan, I didn't like losing Zeke because we didn't replace him. We didn't replace him. Like, at one point, it was like Ronald Jones, you know, and then, you know, it's Rico Dowdle. Like, we didn't replace him. And the fear that I had with Tony Pollard is that he's not a guy who's going to be able to, you know, 325. He's not a 325 touch guy. I mean, Zeke had 250 touches last season. Where's that going? I don't know. And the problem is that Pollard's kind of fallen into they've had to play the Niners before they went in the tank. You played the Eagles, really good run defense. The Cowboys have played some good run defenses, but then there's been other games where the Cowboys are crushing the team. You don't got to run the ball in the second half, right? And I say we because I'm a Cowboys fan since I was 8. So if you guys make fun of me, it's fine. We killed the Giants. We killed the Jets. We killed the Patriots. Who else did we kill? We killed someone. We killed the Rams. So you don't need to run the ball, right? So that takes away from the opportunities. Also, you know, there's some stats out there about Pollard in terms of his like top speeds. they're not getting to those top speeds this year that they were last year. So he's not breaking off as many big runs. And now you got a situation against the Giants, and the Giants defense is not great. They're much better than their offenses, that's for sure. But Josh Jacobs just beat him for 2 touchdowns. But if the Cowboys are crushing them and it's like a 16-point spread, is Pollard going to play in the fourth quarter? I mean, so it kind of stinks. For me, it's probably Taylor, Pollard, Bijan. And their guys, obviously, Jonathan Taylor's a guy you got to start every week. Pollard, who I had to sit last week, you got to play him. Running back is so thin. And Bijan, you dropped him in the first round, you got to play him. Yeah, right, you got to play him. But we are not going to see what we expected from Bijan and Pollard because it's already too late. They would have to go off for the rest of the season for them to meet the expectations they all had for them. But I think Jonathan Taylor is probably the best bet out of that trio.
What about a running back in Austin Eckler, right? A big fantasy guy. This year's kind of underperformed a little bit as well. They've kind of struggled a little bit getting things going. What are your thoughts on Austin Eckler going forward?
See, Austin's a friend of mine, so I'm always going to come to his defense. Yeah. And I would suggest
big fantasy guy, right? Loves fantasy.
Yeah, he's a big fantasy guy. I would suggest that when Austin's had the opportunity to play most often than not, he's getting into the end zone, he's scoring touchdowns. It's good, but he missed a bunch of games, right? I mean, listen, Corey, you're a player. You come back. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Exactly. He had a good game against the Jets. I mean, who else did, right? Keenan Allen was okay. He had a decent game, but Austin got in the end zone a couple of times. They got the Lions this week. It's a really bad matchup, but I also think with the Chargers, their offense is at a little bit of a disadvantage. Their number 2 and 3 wide receivers are out. Mike Williams got hurt and lost for the season early on, and then they just lost Palmer. And Quentin Johnson, listen, I mean, it's small sample size, but he didn't look good. But it was the Jets. So maybe it'll change against Detroit this week. We'll find out. Maybe Austin's going to get a little bit more involved in the passing game. I'm still firing up Austin Eckler every single week. I got no problem with him. He's getting into the end zone. And listen, I would tell you if Austin was having, a bad stretch of games, even though he's a friend, I would say it, right? I mean, I can't be biased. I mean, he's still scoring touchdowns, and at a thin position, he's still, one of the top players among running backs for me. And I think he'll be fine as long as he's able to stay healthy the rest of the season, and hopefully that's going to be the case.
And another one for you. So the past 2 weeks, Dak Prescott, right, has really come alive.
Last 3 weeks.
Past 3 weeks, rather. What are your thoughts on him going forward, fantasy-wise?
I would trade for him. You got the Giants this week. The Cowboys also have a very favorable schedule rest of season. I think we got the Eagles again. I think we got to play the Commanders. Neither one of those teams can stop the pass. There's a couple of other games. I think we play Carolina. We got Seattle at home. So Dak was bad the beginning of the year. He had like that one good game. I think it was against the Jets when no one thought he would. But the other games were not great. And then he hit rock bottom against San Francisco. But since then, he's been really good from a fantasy perspective. And he's been better, I would say, in terms of real football too. Yeah, I mean, Dak is a guy that if I needed a quarterback and I didn't want to go and pay a high price for like a Mahomes or an Allen or a Hurts, go out and get Dak. I think you can get him for a reasonable price.
We're pushing up on time here. I got one final one here for you, Michael Fabiano here on Believe in Bears. My final one for you. Now, this has been happening in a couple of my different fantasy leagues this year, and I got to tell you, we are absolutely loving it. I want to talk to you about the future of the tight end position in fantasy football. Depending on how you pick up your stats right now, I think the number 12 tight end is Logan Thomas, averaging about 5.9 points per game. Find 30 different kickers in the NFL averaging more than that. We've gotten rid of the tight end position, Michael. Look, we're still drafting Mark Andrews, the George Kittles of the world, the Travis Kelce's of the world, but it's just kind of opened it up to more skill position players, more weapons. I mean, are we coming to the point right now where maybe it's a superfluous position right now? Maybe getting rid of the tight end might be in the future of fantasy football?
I'm traditional, man. I've been playing fantasy a long time. People want to eliminate kicker. Nope. You can't call it football without a kicker because nobody else uses their damn foot, right, to score points. And I don't want to get rid of tight end. It's all part of the strategy. I am in a league where that is the case, where there's no tight end. And I got to be honest with you. I drafted Sam Laporta and Evan Ingram, and they've both been freaking awesome for me in the flex. Awesome. So, I mean, listen, we want to make it easy. Like, is everything supposed to be easy in fantasy football? It's not. And you've got young tight ends who are up and coming, okay? Dalton Kincaid. I mentioned Laporta, right? Hell, dude, Taysom Hill's been great the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I could play him at tight end. Is it a thin position? Yes. Is it difficult to go out there and start a guy hoping he scores 8 or 9 points because that's really good at the position? Absolutely. But to me, like, I'm not going to eliminate tight end. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to be in leagues where they're not there. I'm already in leagues where there's no kickers. You know, people want to do what they want to do. That's fine. I'm more of a traditional guy. I'm going to have my quarterbacks, my running backs, my wide receivers, tight ends, kickers. I'm having defense, all that stuff. That's kind of where I'm at. But at least we're seeing, like, this is maybe the best rookie group of tight ends in the history of the league, statistically.
Michael Mayer, even, who hasn't done anything yet.
There's a shot. Laporta could score more points. I think the rookie tight end who scored the most points in a single season is Keith Jackson. Not the old ABC announcer, the player, Keith Jackson. Although every time I think of Keith Jackson, I hear that voice, Keith Jackson, in my head. Let me tell you about the Keith Jackson. I can't do it, but you guys get the point. Jeremy Shockey had a really good rookie year. Evan Ingram had a really good rookie year. Laporta could be better. He's on pace to be better. And if Kincaid keeps doing what he's been doing since they lost Dawson Knox, he's going to be up there in the top 5 too. I think Michael Mayer will be a good tight end in this league. Luke Musgrave has showed, that he could be a good tight end. We're also seeing Cade Otton starting to show a little bit signs of life. Dalton Schultz has been more good than bad over the last month or so. So yeah, I mean, is it a thin position? Yeah. I don't want my fantasy football to be easy, man. I want it to be tough. I want it to be a challenge. If I got to start Logan Thomas every week, or if I got to start Kyle Pitts, which sucks, but I mean, listen, I'll do it. I know Kyle Pitts. Boy, I tell you, of all the players that have been drafted that everyone has come out and said can't miss, generational talent.
This is the year.
I don't know what has to happen. Maybe he needs to go to another team. But Kyle Pitts, dude, I can't deal with the 7 points a game. It sucks. And the second he has like 15, you're like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. It's coming. And then the next week he's back to 6. And Jonnu Smith's breaking off a long touchdown. It is what it is. But yeah, I'm going to keep my tight ends. I'm going to keep my kickers. I'm a traditionalist, so.
I love it. And Brock Bowers on the way too as well. So, who knows? You know what I mean? Like the position is nothing but bright moving forward.
That's right. And my guy Luke Schoonmaker could have had a touchdown in that. I don't want to get into that Cowboys game. Make me mental. Not that Schoonmaker, but yeah. And actually, I didn't even mention Jake Ferguson. Look how good he's been.
Yep.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Really,
I mean, let's be fair. The Cowboys tight ends, they kind of grow them on trees, right? Ever since Jason Witten, they've done a nice job with Dalton Ferguson. Yeah.
And the kickers, right? Last year, nobody was Brett Maher. Who that? Really? We were going to sign Brett Maher until the end of the year where he got in his head was awesome. And in fantasy, he was the top 3 kicker. This year, this freaking Brandon Aubrey is like the best kicker in the league, not named Justin Tucker. I know. I wish we were this good at every other damn position. Or an owner or GM, but I digress. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Hey, we're Bears fans. We're taking notes on this stuff anyways because we got a long way to go. That's all. Michael Fabiano, thank you so much for joining us here on Believe in Bears, senior fantasy analyst at Sports Illustrated. Listen to him weekly on Fantasy Sports Radio, Sirius XM, and of course, a teammate on the Believe Network. Michael, man, thank you so much, man. I've been following your work for a very long time. Your knowledge, I can't tell you enough how much the fantasy community treasures your knowledge over the years. Keep up the great work. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can have you back on sometime soon.
Appreciate the kind work, guys. Have a great week, and I guess go Bears.
Yeah. We'll spare down.
Hey, this is a must. Yeah, this is a must win, Michael. This is a must win. We got to beat Carolina to keep that draft pick stuff going together. So this is as close as it gets.
It's like the Deontay Foreman, DJ Moore revenge game, but also it's like that whole like draft pick sort of situation game too. I don't know, but good luck to the Bears. I mean, can we get Justin Fields back? This is my want and need in life. I need Justin Fields back here sooner rather than later. Hopefully he'll be back as soon as possible. We need him.
I would love that. And if any of the fans tuning in to you, if you give them wrong advice, just hit up Michael Fabiano on Twitter and just complain to him about that.
Fine, yeah, go to Twitter. Twitter doesn't exist anymore. Now it's X. Hey, that's part of my job. I give you good advice, and when I give you bad advice, you just blame me. It's fine. It's all good. Hey, why did you do fantasy? Because Fabiano's an idiot, and he told me to sit down. I'll take it.
And when they get it right, they go, "No, this was all me." Fabiano,
they gotta give you some of that
article. Didn't read any of that.
It's all good.
I'll be well, Michael. Thank you so much for joining Believe in Bears today.